This video is about my experience of living in the Philippines during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Philippines implemented the most stringent lockdown in the world. While it seemed to be effective in limiting the spread of this deadly world pandemic, the cure became worse than the disease. Not only did Filipino government not implement sensible controls based on science, it became a cash cow for those in government. While this is something that can be expected of a third world country, when the thievery is experienced firsthand, and it is denying food to starving people, it is unforgivable. And that is just what happened. I understand this is what happens the world over, including back in my country, the USA. But we don't let people starve. I hope. The main focus of this video is to share my experience in Manila getting my expired visa extension renewed. This has become a 4.5-month ordeal. It has most likely cost us our restaurant. We weren't prepared to be gone this long. When we were preparing to go to Manila, we debated whether Michelle should go with me. It was decided that the boys could manage the week to 10 days we were expected to be in Manila, and we were going to shop for some needed items for the restaurant. I want to take this time to thank everyone, from the bottom of my heart, for their financial and moral support. I have never been good at accepting help from people, and it has been a very humbling experience. I don't know what we would have done without this help. I feel ashamed that I am in this situation. I came to the Philippines before the pandemic, and I never dreamed something like this would happen. At the beginning of the pandemic, I felt this was a good place to be. The infection rates and deaths here were very low compared to the US, and much of the rest of the world. I have been coming to the Philippines for 9 years. During that 9 years I have spent as much time here as I have back in the US. During that time I have seen many changes in the Philippines and I have learned much about the people and the country. I have learned about the good, the bad, and the stupid. One of the serious issues I have discovered is the extent of the inflexibility and rigid compliance to rules even during a pandemic. I have learned that there is no reasoning and flexibility to that is the rules statement. That mentality and lack of sensibility has the Filipino people following like sheep. The corruption and abuse by the government on its own people is what can be expected by a developing country. All the good things that I have loved about the Philippines has been overshadowed by the corruption, arrogance, and mismanagement that has no regard and consideration for its people. I traveled back to the Philippines February 6, 2020, on a 59-day visa. A couple of days before my visa expired, Michelle and I took a bus to Bacolod to immigration to get my visa extended for 6 months. The Philippines requires that you first get a 59-day visa before you can get extension for 6 months after that. On the way to Bacolod on series bus we were stopped our checkpoint. The COVID-19 was becoming an issue and they were doing temperature checks and requiring face mask. We stopped at checkpoint before some ag and I expected it to be a routine check. Officers in camouflage uniform entered the bus and when they got to me they asked me my age. I was 73 years old. They took me off the bus and I was being questioned about why I wasn't complying with the president's order for lockdown for seniors over 60 and anyone under 18. I explained I was unaware of it. It was a new order so they put me on a bus to return home. I thought I was going to be arrested. I spent the next 2 months in lockdown with the kids. Soon after they put everyone in lockdown. Michelle was given a pass to go once a day to get food. The line to get into grocery store was several blocks long and would take a couple of hours just to get into the store. Shelves were empty because people were hoarding and stores weren't getting resupplied very well. Michelle found a rice supplier that would sell us sacks of rice. We got 3. A sack weighed 50 kilos or 110 pounds. At home we have Michelle, myself, her 4 sons, Jojo's girlfriend and the 2 grandsons, 9 people total. A sack of rice lasts us about 3 weeks. She would buy as much canned goods as she could get so we were stocked pretty well with food. But we had a lot of neighbors that were not okay with food and had lost all income. They were going without eating. One person divided a kilo of rice with his own family of 4 and with several other families. This was all they had for 3 days. Another family was boiling banana peeling to try to eat. We started helping several with rice and canned food. Eventually we were helping about 10 families. My brother Jerry was helping about 30 to 40 families. The government gave money to help people but it didn't make it to the people. The officials in charge took the money. After the 2 months in lockdown, I was able to leave the house, but was limited to where I could go. I couldn't go to the market or travel to Bacolod. I tried to get a medical pass, but they wouldn't approve it. I was going to go get my visa renewed because now my visa has expired. After this, we found a property to rent for a pizza restaurant we had planned, but the building required refurbishment. We got some of the workers that we had been supplying food to and put them to work on the building. The time and cost was more than what was anticipated. It took us about 4 months to finish the restaurant. After we got the restaurant open, I went to Bacolod to extend my visa. But by this time it was more than 6 months past renewal date. They informed me that because I had went more than 6 months that I had to go to Manila to get it extended. I would have to get an appointment online with immigration in Manila. We went to visit an attorney. She wanted 30,000 pesos, $640 plus expenses to do it. They would be an additional 30,000 pesos or more for the visa. So it was going to cost me 60,000 to 70,000 pesos for the extension, $1,280 to $1,500. For me to do it myself would mean traveling to Manila. Round-trip flight Michelle and I was $130 and hotel for a week less than $100. I had some things that I wanted to get in Manila that was going to cost 2,000 pesos in shipping cost, so we decided to go to Manila. To travel required getting a travel pass. That required X-ray and blood work. It turned out that it was quite an involved ordeal and cost 1,500 pesos, $32. We spend every day doing medical and paperwork for a week. Everything had to be done in less than 7 days before travel. I had my appointment for March 1, 2021. I had a flight February 27. We spent all week getting everything done. We got our passes 30 minutes before we had to leave for the airport. I had booked a hotel close to immigration in Chinatown. I had paid for 3 days. 800 pesos, $17, day. I wasn't sure how long immigration would take. I go to immigration and they give me a date of March 15th to pick up my passport/visa. I booked a flight back to Bacolod for the 17th. I paid for the extra days at the Oyo Hotel. We go on the 15th to get my passport/visa at immigration and they are closed and wouldn't open till the 19th. So I couldn't take my flight home. The airlines wouldn't refund my money. I booked a new flight for the 24th. I go on the 19th and got my passport/visa. On the 20th we moved to an apartment near the airport. We had been in Chinatown for 3 weeks. I was expecting 1 week. The new apartment was in Moonwalk, Pasay. It was a nice apartment with refrigerator and a small stove, a separate bedroom and living room, kitchen, and balcony. Cost 1,200 pesos, $26, day. I expected to only need it for 3 days. But the airlines were now requiring COVID swab test to travel. I had developed a cough before leaving Chinatown but didn't think anything about it. I wasn't showing any temperature. I wasn't feeling great but not really sick either. The COVID test were costing 5,000 pesos, $106, each. That was double what I paid for flight. That had to be done in 3 days prior of traveling. We found a place to take the test where we could get results within 36 hours. When we went to take the test, my cough had got more persistence. I took water with me, but while at the testing center I had to go outside because of my coughing. The guy doing the paperwork asked Michelle why I went out. She told him some kind of story. Even thought I had this cough, not feeling well, I had no fever. I never dreamed I would test positive for COVID, but I did. So we missed another flight. Also, we got calls from the health department about my positive test. We were put into a 14-day quarantine. The apartment owner was notified that we weren't allowed out of the apartment. They were going to move me to isolation center or hospital but had none available. They said they would be dropping off food for us. Michelle is on the phone with the health department several times a day. They can't put me in an isolation center because I am a senior. I don't understand that. The hospitals were full, so we stay in the apartment. We ran out of food and we weren't allowed out. The doctor on the phone would promise every day that they would be delivering us food. But it wasn't getting delivered. This really sucks, so Michelle goes out and get food. The owner of the building contacted the Burji captain and they said that Michelle cannot go out for 14 days starting today and neither can I because we have violated the quarantine, so the 14 days start again. It sounds more like punishment that for health reasons. Michelle had got sick too but they didn't know it. The barangay captain and doctor has talked to the building president and the owner of the apartment and informed them that they can't make us leave. I stopped paying for the apartment. I couldn't go out to get money or food and planned on keeping what money I had for food and emergency. Getting food was an issue. They kept promising to deliver food but it never happened. They promise every day for a week. Michelle went out and got food but that is gone. Now everything is in lockdown. It is over a $1,000 fine to violate the quarantine. Now with everything in lockdown I can't go out. I would get caught for sure and probably wouldn't find anything. We are not paying rent now but they couldn't rent the place anyway. I have paid them enough already that it should cover their expense for the month. I know that before they weren't renting enough to pay expenses. I offered a reduced rate of 500 pesos a day but they wouldn't agree. The girl that owns this apartment is working in the US. I know they own 3 apartments here, maybe more, and with the pandemic they can't keep them rented. This is really hurting a lot of people. This trip to Manila has cost me 1,408,000 pesos, $3,000 at this point. I don't have any money left. I still have the expense of flight home, COVID test, and food and other expenses. I only have $40 right now, however I will get my social security in a few days. Of course I can't got to get the money when I do get it. I haven't received my stimulus money yet but I owe all of that anyway. I am glad to be in a nice apartment and they can't evict me. Lol. If they would deliver the food promised. I got to feeling well except for a cough. Michelle is very sick and can't go out. We never got any food delivered. I decided to go out and get food. It is just at the end of our street. I can see it from the balcony. They caught me on CCTV and called shortly after I returned to the apartment. Michelle was sleeping and didn't know that I went out till they called. I am really pissed. They have promised food for more than a week and haven't delivered anything yet. I am sure they are being paid but are pocketing the money. I was cooperating but no more. I will stay here now as long as I can rent free. I am not a complying Filipino. They treated to evict me but I am a 73 years old senior with COVID. Also they fuck with me. I will have Michelle tested and start 14 more days of quarantine and free rent. Guess what? They delivered us some food after more than a week of promising. I believe that trying to make a complaint about me breaking quarantine by going out to the grocery store wasn't going to fly very well when they had not delivered on the food. No doubt it was the only reason food was delivered. It was the only day that food got delivered. Michelle went out and got some food a couple of times even though she was sick and it is so hot out. Now she is very sick. For about 4 days I was concerned about her making it. She was very restless and having a hard time breathing. She was running a high fever with chills. I vomit some but she is vomiting a lot. I work at getting her to drink water to prevent dehydrated. Her clothes are wet from the fever. I am concerned about her mentally also. She seems to be out of it and not dealing with reality. When I received my social security, I sent money to Jerry, my brother, by Western Union to put on my GCash account so I could order McDonald's for delivery. I can pay for it online. It is hard for me to get any cash here because I can't go out to Western Union to pick it up. We got our McDonald's delivery and I got the phone number of the delivery rider. We gave him a list of items we needed and paid him to shop for us. However, Michelle only gave him a partial list. The next day I sent him a messages of items we need. There were no response. The next day Michelle messaged him and he responded. He was in a motorcycle accident and couldn't ride. Of all the delivery riders, our rider has an accident. So again we are without things we need. The day we were moving from the apartment the rider called us and said he can pick up things for us now. We finished our quarantine but then couldn't get a response from the health department for a release from my quarantine. Finally the health department called and said we can pick up our release. Michelle goes to get it. They won't release us because no one checked on us. She was able to show the text messages so they gave the release. However, they put in the form that we never showed any signs of COVID. Therefore, we couldn't get a release to travel and will be required to take another COVID swab test to fly. We cannot pass a COVID test for several weeks yet. The virus lingers in your body. The apartment owner asked us to leave. I went online and rented a hotel for 2 nights. We got a taxi and moved out. We get to the barangay of the hotel and it is locked down and won't allow us in. So we have the taxi driver take us around trying to find a hotel. So few are accessible and they are full and expensive. We finally find one and move into Queensland Hotel. It isn't bad and we pay 1,000 pesos, $21 plus, a day. We are still in lockdown. Curfew 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. As a senior I am not supposed to be out at all, but I go out anyway. I never get questioned. The restaurant has good room service for food that is reasonably priced. I never got refunded for the hotel that was locked down. After 5 days at Queensland we found an apartment for 9,000 pesos, $192, month in Maryville. I am glad we have a more permanent place. At least we have no more dealing with hotels. There are a few things we need: towels, sheets, pillows, fan, stove of some kind. We have no refrigerator. No AC. No internet, no TV. Anyway, we are happy to have the apartment. As for right now, I am in a comfortable, affordable apartment. I still won't be able to leave Manila and go home till I get a negative test, and since it cost $100 to take the test, I will wait till I feel like I have a reasonable chance to pass it. If I failed the COVID test, I will be placed into a 14-day quarantine. I had rather try to get out and enjoy Manila if we aren't in lockdown until I can pass a COVID test. I am very discouraged. I hope I can pass the COVID test and get back to Bago. Then it is only a matter of taking care of my things, saving the money I need to go back to US. But the reality is that the best case scenario is 1 month to get finished with quarantine in Bago. The cost of the COVID test and flight home will take most of the money I get in May from Social Security. My visa extension expired May 6th. Also, the Philippines require exit visa to leave when you are here for more than 6 months. Besides the cost of the exit visa, I have to travel to Iloilo on a different island. That requires COVID test, travel permission and cost of the transportation. No way can I afford all this at this time. As of right now, I don't see being able to leave in less than 6 months. We are rented the apartment for another month. We don't want a chance getting the COVID test and failing, and then being placed in quarantine. My mental state isn't very well. I am bored out of my mind and fighting depression. I fight depression by staying active. I wish I had my computer or my violin with me. That would give me something to my mind busy. I really need to get back to Bago so I can take care of things there and get active with projects. I need to make changes in the restaurant and get the boats ready to sail. My son isn't doing well in Florida. His health is life-threatening. I also need to get back to Florida for my own health reasons. I suffer chronic pain and this hot weather makes it much worse. June 2nd. We got a cyclone. We needed the rain and cooler weather. It has been horrible hot and humid. Cyclone Dante didn't produce much rain or wind by the time it reached Manila. We have been in Manila for more than 3 months now and have had very little rain. June 6th. I have flight reservations for June 12th to Iloilo. From Iloilo we take the ocean jet ferry to Bacolod. Flights from Manila to Bacolod are around $200 each. The Iloilo flights are $17 each and the ferry $9. I don't understand why there is such a difference in cost. The distances are about the same. Michelle spoke to Iloilo LGU and they said we can travel through Iloilo. Bago said they pick us up at the dock and take us to quarantine. They will inspect our home to determine if we spend our quarantine at home. If they don't approve it, then we will be quarantined at Bago City College. June 9th. We went and took a COVID swab test for preparation for our June 12th flight. We will get the results June 11th. The Philippines has 78 billion pesos for vaccine. The population is 110 million. They have spent 5 billion for vaccine and vaccinated 5 million people. Only a little over 1 million fully vaccinated. The politicians were first to get vaccinated. Frontliners are next and a few of them have been vaccinated. They haven't got to seniors yet. They are only going to vaccinate Filipinos. The US is sending 50,000 doses to the Philippines. However, the US Embassy isn't vaccinating America's citizens either. We went and got our COVID swab test. We get the results Friday the 10th. Our flight is Saturday the June 12th. Bago City College is close to the house, but I don't know if anyone can deliver anything to us. I know they won't be able to see us, but maybe they can leave us food. At the end of our quarantine we get another COVID swab to get released from quarantine. I believe we spend 10 days in quarantine. Also, my understanding is that Michelle and I will be quarantined separate. If only one of us passes the COVID swab here in Manila, the other one is going to go home. If one of us fail, I am not sure where that one will be quarantined. Sometimes they move you to a COVID-compliant hotel. These are general very poor and overpriced hotels. Because of my age, that presents a problem because hotels don't want to take me. I just hope we both pass. Money for all this is a problem. Also in the Philippines, if you are hospitalized and you can't pay, they don't let you leave the hospital. Also, some hospitals won't accept me because of my age. June 12th. We pack up everything in the apartment and go to the airport. We arrived to the airport at 7 o'clock for a 9:25 flight armed with our COVID negative result, our safe pass but not our S-Pass. Bago hasn't sent it yet. We give the airport counter our information while we wait on Bago to send the S-Pass. At 9:00 Bago calls. We are at the last minutes before they will allow us to check in. Bago told us that the person that signs the pass isn't there because it is Independence Day. The airline said we should rebook for the next day. While waiting to book for the next day, Bago calls again to inform us that we will be required to take a new COVID test because this one will expire before the flight the next day. So we take a taxi back to the apartment. Everything has been cleared from the apartment, so we are now sleeping on the floor. We booked a new flight for the 16th. We now go back to get another COVID test. So we lost our third set of tickets. We have 72 hours from when we test till we fly. It takes 2 days to get the results of the test. Then we send the results and our flight information to Bago to get S-Pass. We only have 1 day for them to get it back to us. I have spent the last of my money for the flight and COVID test. They wouldn't give us 1 extra day on the test even though it is their fault that we weren't able to get the pass, and the airline was willing to let us fly on the test results if Bago would issue the S-Pass. Michelle talked to Bago City LGU, local government unit, about our COVID swab test. Our flight is at 9:25 from Manila to Iloilo. We take the OceanJet ferry from Iloilo to Bacolod at 2:30 p.m. That is an hour trip, so we arrive in Bacolod at 3:30. So Bago LGU informed us that we have to take the swab test after 4 p.m. on the 13th, so the 72 hours don't expire before we get to Bacolod and off the ferry. I hope it isn't delayed for any reason. Also, that is cutting it short to get the S-Pass approved by Bago LGU. How stupid can they get? June 14th. The COVID testing center called and said they had our results already. Michelle went and got the results. She tested positive. 4 days ago we both passed. I don't know what will happen. We wait for them to notify her about quarantine. I plan on going back to Bago City, but I am having a problem sending the documents for the S-Pass. Michelle isn't cleared to travel, so she has to stay in Manila. We are totally out of money. I have less than $20. Not enough for taxi to airport and taxi from airport to ferry in Iloilo. We have rent here on the apartment due, and rent, electric, and water in Bago due. We are not sure what Michelle has to do. Maybe they put her in quarantine. Last time they called and started their process. We wait to see what action they take. If I get to leave on the 16th, I will have been here for 109 days. I won't believe everything is okay till I am on the plane and then the ferry to Bacolod. June 15th. Michelle spoke with LGU Bago this morning. They have my application for the S-Pass and everything seems to be in order. They expect it to be approved later this morning. Also, they informed Michelle that the COVID swab test 72 hours expires at 4:30 tomorrow. The ferry is scheduled to be in Bacolod at 3:30. They will pick me up at the port and transport me to Bago City College. However, if it is past 4:30 before we get there, then I am required to take another COVID test. My understanding is that they don't charge for the test. I borrowed $100 from my ex-wife to get me to Bago, and I gave money to Michelle to buy food. I got my S-Pass. I am packed and ready to go to the airport. I hate leaving Michelle in Manila, but she has lived and worked here and she knows Manila well. I need to get home to deal with issues with the restaurant and the boats. I arrived early at the airport and it was a good thing that I did. I have to go through several places in the airport showing my S-Pass and COVID test. It took me more than 1.5 hours to get to the gate. It was a relief to finally get on board and seated. The plane was less than half full. After boarding, we sit at the gate for a long time. We were late leaving by half hour. After arriving at the Iloilo airport, I had to fill out a health form and show my S-Pass and COVID test. They actually check the time to see when it expires. I still had 1.5 hours before it expired. After claiming my luggage, I got a taxi to take me to the port. It cost 600 pesos, $13. On the way to the seaport, we stopped at checkpoint where I show my S-Pass again. I have shown my pass about 8 to 9 times already. I got checked in at the port and paid 30 pesos, 65 cents, port fee. Bago City has call about times tracking my procedure. I boarded the ocean jet and waited for it to depart. It was 20 minutes late departing. I arrived at Bacolod at 4 o'clock. Half hour left before my COVID test expires. The person that had been calling for the last several hours tracking my travel progress is now unavailable. Finally, around 6 o'clock, I get a call. They are turning my transportation pickup over to the night shift. A guy calls shortly after but doesn't speak English, so I have no idea what he is saying. I call Michelle and give her the phone number on the caller ID. She calls and he informs her that they are waiting for the next ferry before they come to pick me up. He told her that he couldn't understand me because I didn't speak good English. 2 guys come in a covered truck after I have been waiting for over 4 hours. The other ferry arrives and 5 people are loaded into the back of the truck with me. There are several other vehicles there from different areas, waiting to provide transportation to their areas. As we exit the parking lot, the driver turns on his emergency light and siren. We go speeding through the streets of Bacolod, often going into oncoming traffic with concrete medium diving us from our directional lanes. We go through busy intersections and red light. After letting us set for 4 hours, now it is an emergency to get us to the COVID center. As we share the roads with other COVID transportation vehicles with their lights and sirens going, the drivers give a friendly wave to each other. The odds of being killed in an auto accident traveling to a COVID center is much greater than dying of COVID. The COVID center was like a cheaply produced disaster movie. All the luggage was put together on the gym flood, and a girl dressed into a hazmat suit straps a tank on her back and disinfect the luggage with spray. We are then taken to a different part of the building and set in school desks where we are given rice and sausage and a bottle of water. I called our restaurant and had some pizzas delivered. They were some of the best pizza ever. LOL. After eating, we did a ton of paperwork of where we had been, where we are going, and our living arrangements. They went over all the requirement for the quarantine and what to look for signs of COVID. I didn't tell her that I had experienced COVID and knew what to expect. The gym was full of tents that we were placed in to wait. They were equipped with a cot and fan. I fell asleep. Around midnight they woke me up and asked if I wanted to go home. I signed a release and called Keaton to come get me. So I was able to go home to spend a 7-day quarantine. Michelle remains in Manila. I hope she comes home soon. I hate that she has to get another COVID swab, and we make a flight for her again. This will be her 4th swab. I will get a 4 when I fly home. They are around $100 each x8 for the 2 of us. Plus we have paid for and lost 7 airline flights. July 3rd. 6:30 p.m. We just now got everything approved. I worked on it all day while Michelle has spent the day on the phone. It is totally crazy what it takes to get travel permission. Michelle had to prove that she lives in Bago. The ferry from Iloilo is the to-go ferry. It is a car and freight carrier. Instead of the regular 1.5 hours to cross, it takes 4.5 hours to cross. She won't get to Bago till almost midnight the 4th. She had to get S-Pass from Bago City, a Stay Safe app on the phone, make the flight and ferry reservation, and provide them to Bago before they would issue the S-Pass. There are several ferries but are not all running on the same days. Also, I had to get a ferry that left port after the flight arrived time. She will have to take a taxi to the airport and jump through their hoops. That is stressful and takes time. The flight is at 9:30, flight arriving in Iloilo at 11 a.m. It took me 1.5 hours to get from check-in at the airport to the gate. When she arrives in Iloilo, she has to explain why she is in Iloilo. Then take a taxi to the seaport. Costs 600 pesos. About $13. The flight was $29 and the ferry $9. Luggage cost will be another $30. She will spend several hours at the quarantine center. In Bago City when she arrives. It will be a long, hard day for her. June 23rd. Today is my last day of quarantine. Tomorrow I am free to go out. I have to call the health department and they will give me a release. I spent 109 days in Manila when I was only expecting to be there 10 days. I am really pissed off about the whole deal. Most of it was unnecessary. If the immigration had processed my visa as they should have, I would have been back within the 10 days. But because they closed for disinfecting the immigration office, everything got delayed and then they implemented the COVID testing. If I had left when my flight was booked to go back to Bago, I hadn't caught COVID at that time. After getting new flights because of the delayed visa issue, I did test positive for COVID and was placed into 14 days quarantine and lost another flight for Michelle and I. Finally, both of us were able to get negative COVID test. But then ran into issues with our S-Pass because the only person that could sign them was out of town because it was a holiday. So we lost the flights and had to get texted again because the 72 hours restriction for the COVID test expired. We tested again and Michelle tested positive, so she lost the fourth flight. I took my flight and came home. During this time we've had to pay for the COVID test, lost flights, hotels and apartment plus our rent and utilities in Bago. In a few days Michelle will get tested again and hopefully cleared to get home. Of course she will have to be quarantined for an additional 7 days here. She is in a 14-day quarantine now from the positive test and we had spent 14 days before when we were actually sick with COVID. But I am glad that I can go free. The restaurant needs my attention. Since I have been home, I have downloaded my videos and pictures of Manila, and my narrative of my adventure into my computer to do a video for my YouTube channel. I started today trying to get the restaurant doing better. The sales have dropped. I am not sure why. The pizzas are still good. The hour we are open has shortened. This week while I am in quarantine I will try to get totals of sales and expenses. Without being able to observe firsthand what is going on, it is hard to tell. I plan on going back to the US in September or October. The restaurant needs to be supporting Michelle by then. My income will be supporting me. I went to Manila February 27th. I was there almost 4 months. This is all crazy and some sort of a game with the politicians. The pandemic has given them unlimited power. They have put 21 cities in total lockdown. We are not in the lockdowns. This island Negros has 2 provinces. Ours is Negros Occidental on the western side and Negros Oriental on the eastern side. Negros Oriental has been places in total lockdown, meaning no one can leave their homes. The Philippines government has 78 billion pesos budgeted for vaccines but is not using it. It is probable already in the personal bank accounts of government officials. The lockdowns and travel restrictions is killing the economy here, but they won't spend the money that is already allocated for vaccines to be used. If people got vaccinated it would open up the country, but government would lose their unbridled control over people. To say the least, the Philippines management of the pandemic has left me bitter with the government. It has exposed the extent of corruption and abuse. It shows how little they care about the welfare of its people. This pandemic is enriching the wealth of government officials. When money is allotted for helping people, little or none of it gets to the people, but instead is siphoned off to officials at different levels. They all take their cut. COVID aid. 8,000 pesos was targeted to families, but less than 200 pesos actually made it to the people. It is common knowledge among the Filipino people of who got the money. Contact tracing. Instead of hiring qualified people to do the contact tracing, the officials in charge of hiring Hired family member. Many times this is their uneducated parents, and other family member that were illiterate. The duties were to track those that tested positive for the COVID-19 virus on computers, contact that person to interview who they were in contact with, and follow up with those people to see if any was sick. But the people hired weren't able to use a computer, no ability to do reports, and no transportation to visit those infected. It was reported that on about 5% actually showed up for work, and had the ability to do their job. Of those that were qualified, the workload was impossible to handle. My experience was no one visited us during my quarantine. When it came time to be released from quarantine, it was stated that I never shown any symptoms. What a total crock. Therefore I couldn't get an okay to travel without getting another COVID test, that I wasn't going to pass because the virus shows up for several weeks after having COVID. This extended our stay in Manila. Vaccines. Money was budgeted for vaccines, but of the 85 billion pesos budgeted, only 5 billion has been used. Those vaccines went to vaccinate the politicians. They didn't even fully vaccinate the nurses and frontliners. I am sure that the money left for vaccines is finding its way into the pockets of the politicians. Corruption in government is worldwide and especially in third world countries. With this pandemic, it has given government more control over the population. It has provided more money to be had by officials. The greed has become systemic. Michelle made it home July 4th. She was able to book a ferry on OceanJet. She was the only one at the COVID center in Bago, so she got processed quickly. She was relating to me the ride from the seaport to the Bago COVID center. How they ran their emergency lights and siren. Now for her 7-day quarantine. Thanks for watching. I will be producing a new video soon of a friend's ordeal of getting stuck in Manila. She went to do a required in-person interview at the U.S. Embassy to get a visa for traveling through Miami to the Bahamas. She was to spend 3 hours layover in Miami. The U.S. required a $300 visa for this. The embassy rejected her visa because her boyfriend lives in West Palm Beach. To return to Bacolod, she got COVID swab test. She tested positive. She hasn't shown any symptoms. Now she is in a 14-day quarantine. Thanks again for watching. Like and subscribe.